it's kind of uncomfortable. And if she does, all you gotta do is just slide one finger up underneath her claw to get her to kind of readjust where she's not being uncomfortable. But then you'll just pet real nice and slow down the middle of her back, up around her face. All she really knows right now is that when something comes towards her face, it's her food bowl. So just kind of keep aware of that. They have really poor eyesight, so they can't really tell what things are. And it is time for her to have another little snack, so I've got a little bowl of food that will offer her. But I'll just kind of slide my arm out. It takes her just a minute to kind of figure out that you're there and that she doesn't have to hold on to me. Oh, yes. Here we go. Goodness gracious.
Are you okay?
Yeah, she just. Oh my gosh.
So where are you guys from?
Knoxville.
Okay, not too far then.
Finally getting a whole sloth.
Yeah. Where'd you hear about it?
You hungry? What you looking for?
Might be able to hold that
I guess it
hole.
was on Facebook or I
Yeah.
don't remember now how or where.
Oh, cool. And so Chloe is a two-toed sloth, although it really makes more sense to call them two-fingered sloth because it's just the front where they have the two, and on the back they do actually have three.
Yeah.
But all sloths will have three claws on the back feet, and it's just the front feet where they differ. You've always been kind of interested in sloths?
Yeah, I've always
Yeah.
loved sloths. They've always been my favorite animal.
Yeah. What's your favorite thing about them? Just their mannerisms or something?
I don't know. I just always loved them. I
Yeah.
have no clue like where I got it from or anything.
Yeah.
I just always thought they were cute.
You ever think you get the whole one?
No.
It's not a common thing because sloths by nature are very solitary animals, and so it takes a lot of time and work and patience with them from a really young age to get them to the point where they actually genuinely enjoy being held and are not just tolerating it. Because if they're just tolerating it and it's not genuinely enjoyable for them, it's not going to be genuinely enjoyable for us because they're going to be trying to get away the whole time.
Yeah.
And it's difficult to hold on to an animal that's trying to get away and doesn't want to be held.
Yeah.
So these guys genuinely enjoy it and will actively seek out human interaction. A lot of times while she's awake, she was kind of sleeping when we first came in, but if people are in here talking and moving around, if I'm doing another encounter with a different sloth or something, and she hears us talking or she sees me, she'll pull herself up onto the side of that basket and start looking, and if you get by close enough, she'll reach out and try and see if she can grab onto you. And if you stand close enough to her and you don't even reach in to pick her up, she will climb herself up onto you. So I've had to warn people before, like if the basket's right there and we're doing a different encounter where they're looking up at Flash or something and they back up against her, she'll start to reach out and try to grab up onto him, and I always have to warn them, like, no, you've got another sloth trying to climb up onto you right now, don't freak out. She's just looking to see what you're doing and wants to see if she can be
What is
held.
it you feed them?
That mixture there is a mixture of brown rice, shaved up sweet potatoes, and a really high quality dog food that we soak in water and then mash into it. And that's what they stay on when they're real little. A little sneeze. And then we start to add in some more non-leafy veggies like sweet potato, or sweet potatoes already in it, but squash and zucchini, carrots and different things like that we'll add in. And then they get a lot of leafy greens as well, things like spinach and kale and romaine lettuce and stuff. So,
How old is she?
8 months old. So she wasn't born here, but she was born in the U.S. at a facility that has a lot of other sloths. And he has a big passion for what he does, and he's actually a veterinarian. He's been doing it for over 35 years and has a lot of different sloths. And so all three of our ambassadors came from him. You kind of up your nose or something, girl? Sneezing. And so Dash and Zoe both came from him as well. And they went all when they were real little, about 5 months old. And how he has his program set up is that once the mother weans the baby, before baby's even weaned, he's going in there and slowly petting mom, and because she's comfortable with it, because she's gone through the program herself. That Chloe is at least 6 generations removed from the rainforest, meaning that her mother, her grandmother, her great-grandmother were all born into that environment, and so they feed off of each other's energy. So as long as mom's comfortable and relaxed, baby's comfortable and relaxed, and so they just will slowly work with both of them And then after the mother weans the baby, baby's already used to being handled by people and being held for short amounts of time. And so instead of the baby just holding onto a branch all by itself, trying to figure out how to be a sloth, the breeder will offer that baby a little stuffed sloth to hold on to the same way that they'd be holding on to their mothers. Because when they're babies, they'll cling on to the chest of the mother and hold on to it like that. And so then they kind of go from their mother being their source of comfort to then that little stuffed animal being their source of comfort. And so then we take that when they're real little, when they first come to us, and they'll still be kind of clinging onto that, and we'll slowly work with them and pet them and everything while they're on that. And then they make the transition on their own. Instead of wanting to hold on to that stuffed animal, they'd rather just climb up and hold on to you because you're alive and they understand that. And so they would rather be holding on to you, and they kind of, so ultimately they go from their mothers being their source of comfort to then humans being their source of comfort. And after they've made that transition, instead of making that call, they'll make a little call or a vocalization that sounds like meh, meh, when they're little babies. And they would make that call to their mother if they had fallen or something and they were trying to get her attention. But after they make their transition, then they go from humans to humans being their comfort. And so they'll make that call to people. So a lot of times while she's reaching out, and if I'm working, doing other things, and she's still trying to get my attention, and she gets really adamant about it, that's when she starts making the noise. She's like, come over here now and let me hold on to you. The paw pads, the leather on the paw pads there are actually really sensitive for them. They have a lot of nerve endings in those, and that's what makes it so sensitive because their eyesight's so poor. They use those paw pads to figure out what they've grabbed a hold of, because a lot of times they can't even really see what they were grabbing onto. They can just see what looks like could be the next branch, when in reality they could grab a hold of it and it could be their own arm. So they've got to, spend the time to figure out what that actually is and have that real sensitive for them so they can tell what things are that they're touching. Yeah, and underneath you can see those lighter hairs. That's actually her adult hair that's starting to grow in, and as she gets older and more mature, that will grow out into her adult hair. So right now she's all one solid, pretty dark brown color, but as she gets to be around a year old, a lot more of those hairs will start poking through, and by the time she's 2 years old, the whole middle part of her back will be that color, real light kind of silvery color. And then the head and the legs will still be darker.
Are her pupils always like this small?
Just in the daytime. At nighttime, they dilate quite a bit, where you'll see a lot more black in their eyes. In the middle there, in the daytime though, they have what's called bright blindness, and it's basically the equivalent of first thing in the morning when you wake up and you turn your lights on. You can't really see anything for a couple seconds. That's what it's like for them all day long. So on top of already having really poor vision because they have a condition called rod monochromacy, that means they only have rod cells and no cone cells, so they're completely colorblind, and they basically just see shapes and shadows. But they pick up motion really well. That's about the only thing they can see well. They just can't really tell what things are that are moving around. And that's why we always try to work real nice and slow when we're working with them. Moving real slow, because quick sudden movements can be scary for them. Because for a sloth that in the wild would have a lot of other animals trying to eat them, and they've got to try to, they're masters of disguise really in the rainforest, because they have an entire ecosystem living on their backs full of moss and algae that will kind of give them a really green color that helps them blend in. But they've got to try to stay blended in like that, because if they are spotted by a jaguar or something, they don't really have a whole lot of things that will help them out to kind of deter that animal. Besides their teeth, they do have really sharp teeth when they get older.
Does she only have 4?
She has 4 in the front, 4 canines in the very front, but they have 18 teeth total. So they've got 4 canines and they have 8 molars on the top and 6 molars on the bottom.
And they can climb a tree with no problem with just the 2
Yes, just those claws. So they're geared to be climbing upside down animals. Crawling on the ground or any other form is not very natural for them. That would be like me trying to walk with hands like this, like walking on my hands. It just doesn't work out well for them. So they're built to be upside down. Everything inside of them works better when they're upside down. Their digestive system, their circulatory system, everything is built for them to be that way. And those claws are very opposite to our hands, whereas open-handed like this for us is our relaxed state, and I can do this for a long time and never get tired. But to make a fist or hold on to something and dangle my body weight from that, or try to climb like that, that's stressful because I have to use muscles to make a fist. But for them, clamp down around the branch is their relaxed state, and to let go of that branch and straighten up that claw is more stressful. So that's why they can just sleep and eat and hang up,
Sleep.
upside down all the time. Start to wake up. When you claw it out.
Her little tongue.
You guys have any other encounters planned while you're here?
This is all that we had, I guess, booked or reserved or whatever.
Yeah.
I really didn't know what else we could do when we actually got down here.
Yeah.
Does she get to see Dash and
They're very solitary animals, so while we do have 4 sloths here, we just encounter with them separately. I mean, they can see each other sometimes when we have more than one out, but they don't ever have direct contact with each
Okay.
other, because since they are very solitary, they're not like cats, 2 cats that are really, well-known house cats together, they'll curl up right next to each other and sleep. But if you put 2 sloths in the same enclosure, they're gonna be in opposite ends of that enclosure. They're not gonna wanna be cuddled up next to each other, even if they were raised together, even if they were, around the same age and they were put to the same enclosure, they're gonna stay by themselves. And in the wild, it's very rare to see 2 sloths in the same tree. And if you do, it's just, a very rare phenomenon that they're both just passing through and just avoiding each other, or it's a breeding pair that have mated and are separating.
How many babies do they usually have?
Just one. Occasionally they can have twins. They can have 2 eggs that will pass through at the same time. And if they're both fertilized, they'll have twins. But it's very rare, and if they do, they really only have the means to care for one. So the other one usually is a lot smaller, and in the matter of a couple hours will fall off, and the mother will just let it fall. Because they do give birth up in the tops of the trees. And as the baby is born, they catch it and pull it up onto their chest, and they'll lick them off and everything.
little big hug?
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna have to take her off.
She gets that a lot.
How old was she when you guys got her?
5 months old. We just had her for about 3 months.
I guess you have to have special license or permits.
We're licensed by the USDA and have a USDA exhibitor license, so the same as zoos. We just don't call ourselves a zoo because at a zoo, you're not gonna get an experience like this where you actually have to get one-on-one time. The idea behind having one-on-one time with the sloths where you can actually sit and hold and interact with them this way is to deter people from going down to Roatan, Honduras and doing it there. Because it used to be really popular that you could go down there and have a sloth encounter where you just spend 30 seconds holding the sloth, and then on to the next person, and on to the next person, and on to the next person. And that sloth would go through hundreds of people in a day doing sloth encounters, because usually it's a cruise ship that will come and port, and they'll book a sloth encounter through the cruise. And they may only have 2 or 3 sloths that they've got to go through hundreds of people to go through. And most of the time, those sloths are wild sloths that they've gone out the couple days before the cruise ship has come to port. And have went on a sloth hunt, trying to find the youngest, cutest looking sloth they can find, and they'll bring it back to their facility, dunk that sloth in a bucket of bleach to scrub off the ecosystem they have growing on their backs. Sometimes even pull their teeth if they get an older sloth that's more aggressive and trying to bite, and then they'll have them go through all those people. But it's a very stressful thing for those, because they are, like I said, by nature very solitary animals and are not just gonna enjoy being held and interacted with if they didn't have the conditioning that Chloe had. And so it used to be really popular, but just recently, just within the past few months, the Conservancy Agency has went in and actually been able to shut down a lot of those facilities and enforce more rules and regulations against handling the wild sloths, where you can't book that through the cruise ship anymore. But there are still ones that will fall through the cracks where you'll get off in Roatan. Still, it's really popular, and just be walking through, just exploring and everything, and somebody will come up to you on the side of the road and be like, hey, come here, I want to show you something really cool. Bring you into their backyard where they've got a sloth in their tree in their backyard, and they're like, hey, if you want to hold this guy, just tell me, and I can get him down and let me hold him. And that sloth has gone through already a bunch of encounters like that. And those sloths, research has shown that the life expectancy of those sloths are roughly 2.5 weeks. after they go through an experience like that, because once they've got all that stripped from their backs, they don't have any more camouflage, they don't have any of those moths that produce the bacteria they need to digest their food. The sloth will starve to death in approximately 2.5 weeks, even if they're continuing to eat every day, but they can't digest their food, and so that's what will ultimately be the thing that will end their lives, if it's not something else that eats them, because they're just sitting ducks out there. If they don't have that ecosystem on their backs, they're a lot easier to spot, so jaguar could just come through and get them. But it used to be a really popular thing that a lot of people would do, and a lot of people didn't know the reality behind it, because a lot of times it would be just an on-the-spot thing. You know, you get there and you see a lot of other people holding the sloth, and you're like, oh my gosh, I want to hold a sloth, that's super cool.
We've had friends
And,
and seen
yeah.
pictures on Facebook where people have done that, and it's probably what,
Yeah. Yeah, and then usually, one thing I tell people is that if you try to have an encounter like this with a sloth that had never been held before, it would essentially be the difference between holding a house cat and a feral cat. And then when I tell people that most of the time those encounters are with wild sloths, so the people are like, well, a friend of mine, or even myself, I went and did a sloth encounter, and that sloth was just holding on to it, peaceful as could be, and just wasn't doing anything at all. When in reality, the first several interactions that sloth had with people were very vicious and were not very friendly whatsoever. And a lot of times those encounters are with the handlers, with the people that are doing those encounters at that facility. But then after the sloths have all of their energy burned through, because sloths are working on a very low energy budget because they eat 95% leaf material. After they burn up all of their energy and they're not, making more of that, they don't have enough energy to even do anything besides hold on. Because like I said, holding on, clamped down is their relaxed state. So they're literally, they're not able to move, they're not able to do anything.
bubble.
Bubbles at ya.
Where's the adults, are they like in here?
Yeah, Flash is in there and then Zoe's in there.
You said you had another one?
We do. Dash is in there as well right now. He's in a separate enclosure, a smaller enclosure where they can't have access to each other, because we're working on plans to build a sloth house right now. And it's going to be a big place where it'll be just the sloths. Kind of like right now they're working on the monkey house, which is what was under construction up there, where people can do the monkey encounters up there. And we're going to have a similar thing for the sloth in the future. But those are still under plan, so that's just a temporary thing for him right
So
now.
she just stays in the basket?
When she's down here, yes. When she goes back up to the house, that basket goes into her enclosure where she's got branches right up above her that she can climb around if she wants to. But most of the time, she just stays in that basket. And I've only ever seen her climb once, and that was because she was hungry and nobody came in to feed her yet.
So she stays in a different building down here?
Yes, so right now, down here, she stays down here during the day when she has
Yeah.
encounters, but then in the afternoon, after her last encounter, she goes back up to the main house, and she actually stays in the owner's bedroom right now because she's still really little. All of the sloths started out that way when we
Okay.
first get them for observation to begin with, but then when they're babies, when they're only about 5 months old, they don't climb just yet, and still she's 8 months old now and still climbing very little amounts. Which is why we actually have to Dremel her nails down, because she doesn't climb enough to wear those nails down herself, and so they get pretty pointy. But she has an enclosure in there that she can climb around if she wants to. But when they're little, when they're raised the same way that Chloe's been raised, they're very pampered. They don't move, they're not raised the same way as a natural sloth. Natural sloth, when the mother weans the baby, it's all on its own and it's got to figure out life on its own. But for the ambassadors, like I said, they get another little stuffed animal. So it's like they're baby for a lot longer than what they would be naturally.
Mm-hmm.
But Flash did not come from the same facility. He came from a facility that had much more of a hands-off approach to his raising. And once the mother weaned him, he went into an enclosure by himself and never really had anybody working with him one-on-one. So before he came to us, he was at a facility that was more so like a zoo, whereas really the only human interaction he had were just people being behind a glass that would observe him, but never was touched, never was hand-fed or anything like that. So when he came here, and John would just sit in the floor of his enclosure for extended periods of time, just talking to him, trying to get him comfortable with his voice and everything. Eventually, Flash slowly would come down while John was in there, take a few bites of food, go back up, and eventually John was then able to have him eat out of the food dish in his hand. And then after time, this has been a span of like 2 years, he was actually able to get him to eat out of his hand. And he could give him little bites of food that way. It was a long process, but sloths are very routine animals, and once they have a routine established, they like to stick to that. They are very scheduled, they like to do the same thing at the same time, in the same way, every single day, and so it started to evolve that their schedule would be that when John would get here in the morning, he would open up Flash's door, walk in there, start talking to him, saying good morning, waking him up, and then come back out here with the door still open and start chopping up his veggies and everything. Then Flash would start to wake up and come down and say, where's this guy at? He's not in here with my breakfast yet, and sees in his bowl, there's no food in my bowl yet. So then he'll reach out onto the door frame, and he'd start to reach out at John, going like this, like, hey, turn around and give me some food, I'm down here, I'm ready to eat. So John would start to feed him just right there in the doorway. Then whatever he didn't want, he would just put it in his dish for him to eat later. And after he consistently started to do that every day, they were like, well, he's already reaching out, why don't we just put a branch up here and he can reach up and grab onto that and come out if he wants to. So that's how his encounters first evolved. We put that branch up there, he started to come out every single morning, and we were hand feeding him. We're like, well, why don't we just share this experience with other people, and we can educate people more to be able to have people make educated and informed decisions about other sloth encounters that they do. Because not all sloth encounters, even in the States, are created equal. They're all different. All of the sloths come from different areas, and unfortunately there is still an illegal animal trade, not just with sloths, but a lot of the other animals. And so sometimes people will get sloths in through that way. But
Herb?
being sneezy this morning.
Oh, well, man. It's for you, Melanie.
It's totally up to you guys. We got until, well, we started about 5 minutes late, so we got until like 12:35. It's up to you guys.
Hold her for a couple minutes and give her back to you.
Well, when we swap,
was that?
yeah, when we swap, it'll
Okay.
be the only time. Because like I said, with the other sloths, how they go from person to person to person, it's the transfer that's the most stressful for them. Because right there for a second, they're just kind of midair, and I'm like pulling the arm out. She feels very unsteady. So we try to limit that to only the one time. But it's up to you guys if you want to swap now or want to swap at like 12:30.
We'll give just last minute or two, so
Okay.
it's fine with me.
That little lump that she's got down there on the end is a little cowlick.
That's what I was thinking, I was like, is
Yeah.
it a cow or something?
They've all got a cowlick like that to a certain extent. Is the way that they'll hang naturally when they're hanging upside down. In the rainforest, when they're getting rained on, the rainwater will fall down from their head to the middle of their back, and then from their booty down to the middle of their back. So their hair kind of goes two separate ways. And then very unlike a dog or a cat, dogs or cats, their hair parts down the middle of their spine and falls down to their belly. Sloths are opposite, so their hair parts down the middle of their belly and falls back towards their spine.
Is there a certain place that she likes to be fed more than the other?
Right down the middle of her back. So sloths in general, their legs are very sensitive. The legs and the paws, the paw pad, the claw area, because for sloths, they're hanging upside down and the legs are what's holding onto the branch. And if a jaguar comes through, the first thing they're gonna grab a hold of is gonna be a leg. And even though Chloe doesn't know what a jaguar is, has never been exposed to any of that, and has been born and raised into this type of environment, it is still hardwired into her brain to be more cautious about those legs and everything being touched. So it's something that we have to slowly desensitize them to as they're babies. That way when they get older, they're not as sensitive to those areas. A good example of that was Zoe. She was our first ambassador sloth that we got, the first baby that we worked with. And she showed us pretty early on the areas that she did and did not want to be touched in, and the areas that she did not like being touched, we went completely hands off because we were like, we want this to be enjoyable for you. We don't ever want you to be upset. And so she still, at 2 years old, is very sensitive with certain areas being touched because we never really desensitized her to those areas. But with Dash, and now with Chloe, we've worked really hard with them to, while they're eating, while they're happy, while they're distracted, we'll slowly go from petting the middle part of their back to their sides, to then a little bit down their legs, and then slowly start to be able to touch their claws, just so they know that those are areas that can be touched and are not a scary thing for them. But for right now, you can just, the middle of her back is where she's most comfortable with, because you can tell while you're touching there on the legs and kind of there towards the side, how her head was slowly turning to look to see if it's something that she needs to be scared of, if it's something she needs to defend herself, or if it's an okay thing. And sloths, I mean, with any animal that, like cats as well, if they get scared, the first thing that they're gonna wanna do is defend themselves. And it's for sloths, their only really defense mechanism is their teeth. Because when those sloths grow, their teeth continuously grow, and it's a self-sharpening mechanism where every time they close their mouth, the top teeth fit just in front of the bottom teeth, and they sharpen on each other every time. So full grown, the sloth skull looks more so like a saber-toothed tiger than anything else.
Wow. Do they have little tails?
The two-toed sloths, no. Three-toed sloths do have a little bit of a tail. Y'all wanna swap out now?
Is it no?
I'm gonna give her a little towel to kinda hold on to, and then we'll transfer the towel over. Good girl.
She's creeping harder on me now.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Alright. Good girl. Flatten this out here. There we go. And she's still got her food bowl there too. She looks like she's getting hungry. But why it has to stay so warm in here, I mean, it's 81 degrees in here right now, and it always stays right at around 80. We never let it drop below 75 because sloths use a bacterial process to digest their food and not an enzymatic process. And since a sloth cannot maintain their own body temperature, it's imperative that they stay warm, because if they get cold, that bacteria will be wiped out from their guts. Now in the rainforest, it can get pretty cold down there, depending on what the season is here. If we get a real cold front, it'll affect all the way down there. So the sloths in the rainforest have a really cool symbiotic relationship with a very specific type of moth that will live on their fur and all throughout their fur and feed on that ecosystem on their backs, that produce the same bacteria the sloths need to digest their food. We don't have them here. As you can see, she doesn't have an ecosystem. She doesn't have any of those moths growing on her because she's never gotten rained on. You know, to form that ecosystem, they have to get rained on multiple times over and over again, and all that's set on their backs to start to form that. And those moths don't live in North America, only in South America. So that's why we have to keep them warm here. But in the rainforest there, if it gets cold, it's not a big deal, because while the bacteria in their gut may be wiped out, they've got those moths on their back to produce more of that bacteria, to give them more of that so they can digest it again. She almost looks like a little bear curled up there.
Their nose is like,
There's no hair, it's just
Yeah.
skin.
A lot of people think their little noses kind of look like a koala nose.
Yeah.
Like a koala, or they get a bat sometimes. They say people say they look like a
Bat.
bat. And then a lot of people will ask me what sloths evolved from, because we don't have really anything else alive today that looks like a sloth, and they have a lot of kind of hypotheses of what they might look like or what they may be descended from. And I always tell people that sloths evolved from other sloths. In the beginning, they were sloths. They looked a little bit different than they do now. And we did used to have the giant ground sloths that have since gone extinct, but genetically they were very similar. So there's not been any big evolutionary jumps that sloths have come from any other species, but they are part of a superorder called Zithorans, and that means a mammal with a hinged spine. So sloths have the ability to curl all the way up into a little ball, and sometimes Zoe likes to rest with her back end on a branch, and she'll curl herself over to where her chin will literally sit on her butt. So she curls herself all the way over like that. And two other animals that are a part of that superorder are giant anteaters and armadillos. Both of those can curl all the way up like that.
It's little ears. They have little
Yeah,
ears way back here.
they do, yep. Are you
Where are
exploring?
you going?
What is this? What do I smell here?
How much does she weigh?
2.5 pounds.
And what's a typical adult, well, at least in the wild way?
In the wild, two-toed sloths usually are about 15, 20 pounds. In captivity, they can definitely get to be a lot bigger than that, depending on what they're fed. And everybody has a different method to what they feed their sloths, but what we do here, they'll be around 15, 20 pounds when they're full grown.
Can I take my finger like underneath her foot, or will
If
that
she'll
bother
let
her?
you, you just
I
kind of
just-
have to go slow with it.
Just kind of want to feel.
Yeah. Nibbling. If she does open her mouth up, just bring her finger away. 'Cause sometimes they explore with their mouths, but they do have teeth that are in there, and a lot of people will ask, especially on our lives, do they ever bite you? And we always tell people that of course they can bite, they have mouths just like I do, but you're not gonna worry about me coming over there and biting you. It's the same way for them. They wouldn't ever aggressively bite anybody, but they do have teeth and they explore a lot with their mouths sometimes
I was,
too.
I was just wanting to see the, like, the bottom side of her toes, I suppose.
You got a picture where she's resting?
Nose is going non-stop.
They have really sensitive, their sense of smell is really sensitive in their hearing. That's why we send out those emails that talk about not wearing any heavy perfumes or colognes, because they can really pick up on those. And even just like lotions and things that they can smell. A lot of times, if I can always tell that if I can smell somebody's perfume or cologne, I can already tell them it's not gonna be a very snuggly encounter, because the entire time, they're gonna be leaning back, looking at me like, oh, when is it gonna end? Because they can't hardly stand it. But even their sense of hearing, like if it's been real quiet for a little bit, and then there's a sudden noise, even if it's just something small like scuffing your foot on the ground, you'll feel her tense up and you can see her jump. And if they get startled enough, they can actually have all of their hair stand on edge and they'll make themselves fluff up to look a lot bigger. They don't ever do it while they're in somebody's lap, because that's where they feel most secure. And sometimes you can really feel them tense up and something is really startled them, but they don't ever fluff up because they feel secure holding on to you. But if they're by themselves, like sometimes if Dash is in his enclosure and there's like clang a dish or something, I'll look back at him and he's like slowly fluffing up. He's like, what in the world was that?
Are they not, they're nocturnal, aren't they?
Some people consider them to be nocturnal, but they're not fully nocturnal because they are awake quite a bit in the daytime and they do sleep a little bit at night. Some people consider them to be because they move around a lot more at nighttime. In the day, for the wild sloths, if they wake up and they look around and everything looks safe, nothing's really scary, they'll just close their eyes back, but they might not go back to sleep. That's why scientists used to think they slept for like 23 hours a day. It's not actually that much, it's closer to like 16, 17 hours, but they just look like they're sleeping a lot more because they'll have their eyes closed. Because if you think of that, about the bright blindness, when you turn the light on first thing in the morning, what do? You squint your eyes because you can't see anything.
When you said they're, you know, they're sensitive to the light, I'm thinking that's another reason I thought they were probably nocturnal.
Yeah, they see a lot better at nighttime, and that's when they'll choose to move around a lot more and go find the leaves that they want to eat and everything. You guys gonna spend the day down here, or you heading back up to Knoxville afterwards?
I guess, what else can we do while we're here? I mean, just walk around and look at the animals we can cut
Yeah,
down.
well, for insurance purposes and everything, we can't really have people walking around and petting animals and stuff through the fences. You can mosey your way out and take a look at everything, but as far as reaching hands in and everything, we can't have a whole lot of that unless you have a specific encounter with them. But as far as in Benton, there's not a whole lot of activity-wise things to do. We're right on the, on the Coe River, so you can drive up towards that way and see the lake that's up there. It's really pretty. There's some pull-offs up there. And as you're going up towards that way, the Coe Dam Deli and Diner is on the left side of the road, and it's a really good, just kind of mom and pop restaurant. It's really nice. Oh, scratching your little face. Get some food stuff in there.
So, for an adult, how long do their claws get?
Their claws continuously grow. So by the time the two oldest sloths that we know of that were in captivity lived to be 54 and 52 years old. So they definitely get to be pretty long when they get older. Flashes right now are probably about this long. He's 7 years old. So think about,
Is Flash the
Ashton.
oldest one here?
Yeah.
And they're sharp, long enough, sharp enough, they can grab onto a branch or a tree and just climb up.
Yep.
It's amazing. I mean, squirrels are the same way, but they've got multiple.
Well, it's the grip strength, really, that gets them. Is grip strength of a sloth is about 3 times stronger than a person's.
Mm.
Because a baby sloth that's just been born has the ability to hold all of its body weight just by one claw holding on to or 2 claws or 3 claws holding on to the branch of a tree. And so that would be the equivalent of a newborn holding all their body weight up just by hanging on to mom's hand. It's just not going to happen. And so even as they get older, the grip strength will be stronger. So they can dangle all of themselves just by one. And if they're trying to climb up a tree, all they've got to do is just really clamp down onto the side, and they'll be able to pull themselves up. But sloths, the muscle to mass ratio is like the smallest of any other animal that I'm aware of. So their movements and everything are working more so based off of tendons and ligaments rather than muscles.
Mm.
So, and that's what makes the snap down around the branch their relaxed state, because all those tendons are so tight that that's what's more natural. And to have to open up and then reach for the next one, that's when they've got to
Yeah.
stretch those out. So they're just opposite to us. And that's how they can sleep and just hang out all the time upside down, because it's just not difficult for them. So much so to the point where if a sloth were to actually pass away holding onto the branch of a tree, they would
Maybe.
continue to hang there until something either rotted or knocked them off of the branch.
Mm.
Yeah. That's kind of morbid to think about, but it's actually kind of cool too.
Is the adult hair, is it more coarse
A
or
little
rough
bit.
compared to, I would
Not a
expect this to
whole
be real
lot,
rough
yeah.
right now.
Not a whole lot, but it a little bit more than what they are with their babies. But in the wild, they would be a lot more coarse, much more bristly than what they are here. And that's because of the ecosystem that we'll have growing on their backs and everything.
Mhm.
So does that brown, does it just